Good afternoon, everyone. Please note that live interpretation is available from English to Arabic. You can press the interpretation button to change the language. يوجد ترجمة فورية من الإنجليزية للعربية. يمكنكم الضغط في أسفل الشاشة لتغيير. Good afternoon and welcome to our webinar on necessity-driven entrepreneurship and creative industries in rural areas, pathways for recovery and building resilience. In this webinar, we will be addressing the challenges posed by the economic crisis on creative industry in rural areas, and we will also pinpoint opportunities and possible solutions on international experience. My name is Lina Maddah, economic researcher at the Lebanese Center for Policy Studies. I hold a PhD in economics, and I will be introducing the topic on cultural and creative industries. Following, we have two speakers joining us from Barcelona. Professor Maria Arazo-Carod from the Department of Economics at Universidad Rovira at Virginia, Spain. Professor Maria has published several articles and books on economic issues. He also serves as the chair for the Research Center on Economics and Sustainability, ECOSOS, and the chair of the International Network of Economic Research, INFER. Also joining us is Dr. Yeganeh Fourheshfar, who holds a PhD in economics from Paris Dauphine University and is a researcher at the Euro-Mediterranean Economists Association. Her research is focused on cultural and creative industries, blue and green economy, sustainable entrepreneurship, and digital transition. Yeganeh is currently involved in the implementation of the European projects of CREACT for Med and InvestMed in the mapping of cultural and creative industries in the South Mediterranean countries, including Lebanon. So let me start the first session in this webinar, cultural and creative industries as drivers of economic growth at the local.
We cannot hear you, Lina. You're muted.
You're muted, yeah.
Okay, apologies for that. So have you heard that I introduced Yeganeh?
Yes, it was disconnected at the beginning of your presentation.
Okay, so I'm going to introduce you again, okay?
No, we heard that part.
My presentation, okay, perfect. So I start the first session in this webinar, cultural and creative industries as drivers of economic growth at a local level. So today, more than ever, cultural and creative industries are placed at the forefront of local development agendas globally. These sectors contribute to the economy, resilience, recovery, and growth, and to the society and well-being of individuals. So in this webinar, we are focusing on creative industries during the times of crisis for several reasons. First, the importance of the diversification of economic activities in rural areas. Second, the significance of the creative businesses in supporting economic resilience and growth in rural areas. And third, considering the potential of cultural and creative industries remains to a large extent an untapped area that needs attention from policymakers. I start with a brief definition of cultural and creative industries, or what is called in literature CCIs. Next one, please. Okay. So, spanning a wide range of different fields from architecture and music to advertising, the cultural and creative industries are an exciting sector of business. People working across these industries include freelance artists and creative minds and art dealers, agents, gallery owners who have set up micro-enterprises, among others. CCIs are, of course, characterized by creative minds, and creativity is an essential component of industries. Whether they are authors or filmmakers, representatives of the visual or performing arts, architects, fashion and jewelry designers, photographers, publishers, software designer, or development of computer games. All these SMEs stand for quality, cultural diversity, and creative renewal. At the same time, they also have a fast-growing, innovative, and knowledge-based economy. The first question that we ask is, can CCIs act as engines for economic growth? So the prevailing arguments among researchers on the potential trends, on the potential impacts of CCIs on economic growth are interrelated and can be grouped as follows. First, CCIs are integral parts of local development. This argument has made the headlines due to numerous policy-making reports and discussions, including most recently the work of the European Commission and the OECD on creative industries. These industries play a significant role both in the social and economic development of developed and developing countries, and they have an important role in the regeneration of cities and the stimulation of fading rural economies. Also, one way of approaching the creative economy is understanding the role of the creative class, which is a term coined by Florida back in 2004, who argues that the creative class is a major driver for urban and regional growth. Also, CCIs contribute to innovation activities. They generate innovation in different ways. The general argument is that these industries are first innovative in themselves and contribute to the innovation in other sectors. They lead to the creation of new ideas, to technological advancement, and can closely influence development and innovation in the wider economy and in all sectors. Also, the contribution of CCIs is evident from the positive externalities resulting from their clustering and agglomeration. This translates into the expansion and growth of cultural and creative neighborhoods and districts, the creation of networks of cooperation within the creative sectors through the easy exchange of ideas and spillovers to other sectors, and the boosting of overall entrepreneurial activities. Finally, also we need to highlight the impact of CCIs on economic growth. CCIs are argued to have a relevant role in generating employment and enhancing the well-being. Several studies, among which is for the 2014, argues that CCIs are capable of boosting employment growth in the wider economy of the United Kingdom. So now we ask why there is a need for the diversification of rural economies. So within this context, we find the policymakers have to consider support for diversification of rural areas where entrepreneurship prevails. Cultural and creative industries, the knowledge economy activities, and ecotourism, for example, are good examples for the diversification of rural economies. Within the Lebanese context, tackling the current challenges confronting rural economic development in general and entrepreneurs in specific, this requires a commitment towards strategic planning in these areas. Based on a field study that was previously conducted by the Lebanese Center for Policy Studies in 3 rural areas, Naidik, Rashaya, and Hidab, we proposed the following strategies to better harness the opportunities in CCIs by local policymakers. First, local governments and municipalities shall identify the niche CCI activity that promotes innovation and spillover effects, such as, for example, the case of the design sectors in some rural municipalities in Lebanon, in addition to acknowledge resources to design effective policies. Second, it's essential to understand the type of creative jobs individuals get in rural areas and the type of the entrepreneurship nature. While in many cases, the rural areas are characterized as areas of stagnation, and thus there is a need for developing a common vision and commitment among key players, the government, the local firms, academic institutions, research centers, local non-governmental organizations, in order to create a favorable environment for creative jobs and creative enterprises. While these strategies are, of course, applicable for big cities as well, problems associated with rural areas are being far away from major cities, and the dispersion of local resources, among which is the human capital, can be overcome by leveraging technological innovative solutions in order to enhance the sharing of information and knowledge. Also, there's a need to focus on, of course, the physical infrastructure that contributes to the emergence of the creative community by mainly the regeneration of places, by looking at the suburbanization path of some types of CCI businesses that require multidisciplinary settings which foster their interaction with universities and research centers in dynamic ways, such as, for example, the case of the software and R&D entrepreneurship activities. Also, infrastructure updating for places with other local characteristics, maybe, for example, periphery rural areas with manufacturing specialization. So this is our general introduction of cultural and industries, supported with some recommendations based on a study conducted by the Lebanese Center for Policy Studies. I'll keep the questions and answer section for by the end of the webinar, and I'll move to the second session now with Professor Josep Maria Arauzo Carod on lessons learned from Barcelona and insight for entrepreneurs and policymakers.
Okay, thank you very much, Lina, for this nice presentation. Let me share my screen. I think you are seeing it now. It's okay?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, thank you. So, well, when I was contacted by you to give this very short speech about the effect of cultural and creative industries over in rural areas, I was thinking about different experiences. Obviously, when you think about that, you tend to depart from your own publications and the areas you have been working on. And in this sense, I will try in this more or less 15 minutes that I do have, I will try to provide you about these industries and the way in which they can or they could help to promote growth in urban, but especially in rural areas. So perhaps I will skip this section about cultural and creative industries because you have defined it well, very, very well. You have defined them very well, and the idea is that, well, this kind of, in any case, let me say that, or let me tell you that this kind of activities, cultural and creative industries, have some advantages. And the main advantage is that they are expanding activities. We are talking about activities that are growing very quickly. And we are talking about activities that they are created to educated individuals, to skilled jobs. And then, and also we are talking about activities that they don't have negative externalities. So they don't contribute to pollution, they don't contribute in a negative way to quality of life of the areas where they are located. So they are, let's say, perfect targets from a policy perspective. They have no, at least, huge negative effects over the areas where they are located. An important dimension of or issue about creative industries is their spatial dimension. And I say that because the patterns of these industries are not exactly the same as those of the rest of economic activities. In any case, before talking about that, let me tell you that the seminars, the webinar is about cultural and creative industries in general terms. But cultural and creative industries include very wide heterogeneity of activities. So we are talking about very different activities, activities with also very different economic implications, and also different spatial requirements in terms of where to locate, where to carry out their activity. But this is important because, for instance, high-tech activities like software design or video game design are not exactly the same as are not exactly the same as for instance, theater activities or craft activities, but all of them are considered cultural and creative activities. So take that into account. Perhaps a good way to differentiate these kind of activities to group them into two main groups. The first is about traditional cultural activities, and here we would include some activities like more traditional linked to culture, like theater, writing, performing arts, music, this kind of economic activities. And we have as well a second group, which is, let us call them technologically oriented activities. And here we have engineering, architecture, software, video games, or these more technological activities. I say that because they have different preferences about where to locate and different needs about the type of environment to have around them. In general terms, talking about cultural and creative activities, so altogether, we observe that there is clear preference to be located in urban areas, not in rural areas. I would say that, okay, it seems there is no room for rural areas to use cultural and creative activities as a growth drivers, because these activities may prefer to go to big cities or to big metropolitan areas. But this is not true at all, because, as I said, these activities are very heterogeneous. And although rural areas are not able to attract those activities more technologically oriented, they are quite able to attract and to keep activities oriented to traditional cultural activities. In this sense, in order to be more applied, let me show you some evidence, both for the case of Catalonia about location patterns and locational preferences of cultural and creative industries. But also, let me show you some very recent empirical evidence that we have for the Italian case about this kind of activities. If we look at the Catalan case, firstly, here you have at the left-hand side a map of entries of new plans of creative industries. Here we have, I don't know whether you can see my pointer, but this darker area in the middle at the right-hand side is Barcelona. So what you have here is that traditional evidence about cultural and creative industries. They enter mainly at the big metropolitan areas and surrounding of these areas. At the right-hand side, you have an specialization index of these cultural and creative industries for the same area for Catalonia. This area in this case is divided in municipalities. And what you have is that in the peripheral rural areas, so those areas outside the metropolitan area of Barcelona, what you have is some strong concentrations of this kind of activities, because some of them correspond to traditional manufacturing activities linked, for instance, to fashion, and all the activities linked to fashion. So the Catalan case will show us that entering in urban areas, there is a tradition of specialization as well in rural areas. If we go here, we have as well additional evidence about it. Is about a recent paper with Lina Madan and Fernando Lopez, in which we show that if we analyze clustering behavior of these activities, these clusters are mainly at the core of the metropolitan metropolis of the for Catalonia and actually for the area of Barcelona. If we look to the Italian cave, and this is very appealing and connects perfectly with, let's say, your orientations as a research center trying to provide policy tools in order to develop rural areas thanks to these cultural and creative activities. The data for the Italian cave, and this is very recent data, is for 2018, so only 4 years ago, shows that rural, let's say, rural central areas have a lot of potential in terms of their capacity to attract and to keep this kind of cultural and creative. Just to summarize these maps, this is, as you can see, of Italy at municipality level. The key point of this map is to look at the municipalities, because these municipalities are peripheral municipalities, so non-central areas, not big metropolitan areas, but peripheral municipalities that are specialized overall in cultural and creative activities. At the left-hand side, we are talking about establishments. At the map of the right-hand side, we are talking about employees, about labor market. And we show with this map that there is room for specialization in cultural and creative industries outside main urban areas. Of course, urban areas also specialize in these activities. Here you have these urban areas as this orange, in this orange color. Okay, but our focus here in this red color showing this possibility of specialize in these cultural and creative activities outside big cities, so in medium and in rural areas. This is in general to consider all these activities in going specifically into industries. We have terms at the left-hand side. You have cultural heritage, and in cultural heritage, it's clear for sure, much evident, this huge capacity of rural, peripheral, non-central areas to specialize in this activity. Okay, obviously this is linked to previous cultural heritage in a given area, to the existence of monuments, buildings, and this kind of potential attractions. But also not in, let's say, activities linked to the past, also in activities linked to the future, like performing arts. We have as well at the right-hand side all these red municipalities in which there is some kind of a specialization, relative specialization in performing arts in municipalities. We have as well additional industries like design and crafts at the left-hand side, and also fashion at the right-hand side. So the point is that there is room for promoting, facilitating, and stimulating cultural and creative industries outside of big metropolitan areas. Although it is also true, and we have to take that into account, it is also true that more technological oriented activities, which are the ones that are growing quickly, have a strong preference for being located in urban areas. And in this sense, let me show you a very short example. One of these industries, which is the video games industries. We were interested in video games industries initially as for that industry, but that because we were thinking about trying to understand which is the role of localization economies. So as you may know, localization economies are these positive effects of the concentration of similar activities in a given area. So the idea is whether an area is specialized in a given activity is providing some advantages for firms of this that belong to this activity industry or not. And if we have a look on the literature about what the literature says about localization economies, what do we know is that there is a clear positive effect over entry. So areas specialized in a given activity attract firms of the same activity, and also a clear positive effect over productivity. So firms which are in areas which are specialized in the same activity as they are more productive. But surprisingly, the empirical literature shows that there are negative effects in terms of survival, which means that survival rates of firms are lower in this kind of specialized areas. Why? Main economic intuition suggests that this is because of increased competition. If you have a lot of firms doing the same in the same area, competition is stronger. And not all the firms are able to support this competition and to be competitive enough and then to survive. But surprisingly, we found as well some papers indicating that there is also a positive effect of survival. So areas specialized have higher survival rates, but under some circumstances. Circumstances like having related industries in the same area, that locating in strong clusters in this area, that mainly these positive effects are for mature firms, are for service firms, and are for project-based industries. From that, our point was, well, then it's more efficient to agglomerate in a urban area, or it's better to go to a rural area in terms of the effects of the environment over survival rates of these firms. And this is a very important point, because if we want to, or if any policy institution or any government wants to promote this kind of activity, it's important to know whether fostering concentration of the same activities in a given area is going to increase or decrease the survival rates. And in order to do that, we made an empirical application that I am not going to show you because I have no time, about video game industry. So this is, as you know, very technological industry, is an industry which is growing a lot, has an expansion, a clear, let's say, a growing trend, and expectations are to continue this process in years, but especially in industry because it is geographically concentrated. And what we know is that the spatial scope, we know that for the huge empirical evidence existing for many activities, we know that the spatial scope of localization economies is very small. So these type effects, or these interaction effects of firms being close to each other, are effects that vanishes very quickly with distance. So this kind of spatial interactions do occur at a very short distances, not at longer distances. And these video game firms are firms which have a lot of interactions across them. And these interactions, let's say, generate localization economies. And this is very important when talking about a potential role of cultural and creative industries, to focus on industries with strong interactions among them. Because at the end, firms are not isolated points on space, are institutions that need to be connected with what's happening around them. So that's which is the effect of this specific type of cultural and creative industries, which are video games industries. Well, this is an industry that has a clear preference to locate in areas. Here you have a map of Spain, but the stock of video game firms per million inhabitants, that it's clear that, let's say, concentration is stronger for let's say, more densely populated places. This dark area at the right hand is Barcelona, which is clearly the key point of video games industry not only in Catalonia, but also in Spain. And here you have some data from a previous paper about these industries in Barcelona. What we found there is that this clear concentration pattern of video game firms, not elsewhere in the metropolitan area of Barcelona, but at the core of the city, and especially areas of the city. The traditional central business district, a smaller area which is called 22 Art District, which was an area promoted by the city council in order to target this kind of high firms, attract them, and generate a kind of ecosystem of high-tech activities closely linked, closely related to cultural and creative activities. Let me show you, just in order to be aware about the magnitude of this concentration. We calculate for these video game firms a very simple indicator, which is called the negative neighbor index. And even the indicator computes for a given area and for a given number of firms, computes a ratio between the observed spatial distribution of these firms with the expected distribution, assuming a random location and homogeneous location, all potential parts of this area. So we that, and our results indicated that according to the number of firms in the area we were analyzing, and according to the surface of this area we were analyzing, we were expecting that each firm belonging to video game industries was going to be located at a distance of 1.7 kilometers of firm. But our results about the real distance showed that mean distance among firms was only 800 meters, so half the expected distance, which means these firms don't want to be alone, don't want to be located elsewhere. They want to be close to other firms doing the same of the same industry. Coming back to this paper I was trying to summarize, what we found in this paper is that there is a positive effect on localization economies for mature firms, so those older than 20 years, that this positive effect on survival exists only for huge concentration. So the idea is that these benefit from being close to each other in terms of achieving higher survival rates if they locate in dense areas, which obviously this is only in urban areas. But when I'm talking about dense areas, I'm talking about density of the same activities. And this is something, let me go quickly to policy implications. I don't know whether I have a couple of minutes in order to finish. Do I have them?
Yes, sure, Joseph. Yeah.
Thank you. So connecting to these results, the idea is that at the end, and let me show you this, share with you my views about that. This video games industry has been especially benefited from public policies taken by the municipality level of Barcelona, trying to attract them to a single area of the city, but in the same, and then once being there is some kind of cumulative process. So additional firms go there because they benefit from being close to all firms. That means that we can create, let's say, a successful cluster of activities in any part of the world, in any part of the country, in both in rural, urban, peripheral, central areas. Not. We need some conditions. You need some initial conditions. You need some minimum amount of activity in order to benefit from these agglomeration patterns. And obviously, not all areas can provide the same conditions. But if there is a common let's say, work by public institutions and private firms trying to identify successful places to carry out this kind of initiatives and to provide with all the required determinants, we could get a successful result in order to generating something from, not from nothing, but from a lack of that industry. Just to show you a final slide about this case of Barcelona. When we talk about this video games cluster in 22 district in Barcelona, we are not talking about firms. And this is very important. We are talking about an ecosystem. An ecosystem, this is a picture of this 22 district there, in which video games firms are going there. There is a common labor market there, which is nice. But in addition to that, we have an ecosystem, because we have a clear public effort in order to promote an educational ecosystem in which we have public universities offering bachelors about video game designs, about offering masters about video game design. Also private institutions offering training about for all the different skills, all the different professions involved in this activity. So at the end, it's a joint cooperation. It's not only about firms, it's not only about institutions trying to develop some areas and providing attractiveness, providing incentive to some firms to go there. It's also about providing to the required ecosystem, providing services, and you can do that as this successful example of video games in Barcelona, or you can also do that in a rural environment, in activities like publishing, for instance, activities like fashion, in activities like craft, or in activities like, as we show for the example, for the Italian case, linked to traditional cultural activities. So that's all. Thank you very much for your attention. If you have any questions, I guess that we will have something like a debate at the end. So I am available to answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Josep Maria, for the very interesting presentation and for sharing some insights about Catalonia and Italy, and at the end emphasizing and presenting this ecosystem, which is a very interesting policy implication. We will keep the questions section till the end of the webinar if you have any questions. And now we will to the third session on creative industries in Lebanon, salient features, where Dr. Yeganeh will discuss the challenges and opportunities facing CCIs in Lebanon, along with targeted policy implications for local governments. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Lina, for this presentation, and also for inviting me. So I also thank LCPS for organizing this very interesting session. Let me share my screen, and I... Okay. So you confirm seeing screen, yes?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm Yeganeh Frouhesfard. I'm a researcher at the Euro-Mediterranean Economists Association. And let me start briefly by talking, taking a few minutes to present our work in Lebanon. To present EMEA. So we are an independent think tank based in Barcelona, and our goal is to bridge policy and economic research. And currently we are implementing 2 EU-funded projects in Lebanon, in line with CCI. The first project is Cracked for Med. So the main target for Cracked for Med is CCI. And the goal of these projects is to enhance entrepreneurship in these sectors. And in Cracked for Med, different pillars, we have training, sub-granting, and advocacy and engagement. We have this online training that was launched last week. So we have a good number of CCI entrepreneurs from the region, and they are following this training program online, and they boost their entrepreneurial skills in CCI. And we continue by attributing grants in order to support entrepreneurship in these sectors. And also we have this project, which is called InvestMed. Also, Lebanon is a target country, and the target sectors in these projects are CCI, but also blue and green economy. So we are having some experience from the ground, and I'm mainly in charge of the mapping, as you already said. Let me start by, we all know about what is culture and creative industries, and I'm now to what do I mean by culture and creative industries. This is a classification I found very interesting to see how diverse culture and creative industries are. We go from cultural heritage, gastronomy, to software, advertising, gaming, as was mentioned just before by Professor Arouza. And so the CCI in Lebanon is very diverse and advanced. So Lebanese taste and know-how are renowned in the Middle East, but not only Middle East and Arab world, but globally. There is this very high potential in many CCI subsectors. And also, as was mentioned, the importance of clusters and hubs. In Lebanon, we observed that there is this jewelry designers hub. As for like jewelry and precious stone sales account for 39% of exports in Lebanon. We also have this cluster of fashion designers, clusters of furniture and design of objects. Gastronomy, Lebanese cuisine is well known everywhere. Also, we have a media industry, which is significant with television, broadcasting, advertising services, audiovisual production, publishing, etc. And in total, even with digital media, it accounts for roughly 4% of GDP. And the latest data we have, unfortunately, is a bit old, but it's from 2014. And the Lebanon also is well known for hosting internationally renowned festivals, which were highly impacted by COVID, unfortunately. So let's go to the current situation and the different crises that the country is facing now. So unfortunately, multiple crises at the same time. First of all, the currency crisis with the enormous devaluation of the currency that led to a banking crisis, and also coming with social unrest and political instability. And on top of that, we had the Beirut blast in August 4th, 2002. And if you just account, as one of the estimations done by World Bank, the damage alone to CCI is estimated to be as high as $1 to $1.2 billion US. So many historical places were destroyed, and this cultural this was unfortunately impacted very massively. And then we also have COVID-19 pandemic on top of all these other challenges, which also affected very drastically cultural and creative workers because of the social distancing measures and all of this decline in tourism, and that affected indirectly and directly the workers in the sectors. And very recently, we also have the war in Ukraine that comes with its own risks and uncertainties that are associated with, such as increase in food and energy prices. The interest rates are going up, and we see a pattern of stagflation all over the Europe and the region. So the current situation doesn't seem to be very bright. And the impact on CCI workers, it was devastating. There was a survey launched by GIZ among Beirut's creative economy. So during, I put the first page of this report or study. It is called Voices of Creatives. And so it estimates that the full-time employment in creative sectors fell by more than 2/3, and the unemployment and underemployment increased by almost 1,000%. So that's amazing. And the talented and qualified young people and families are have already left, or they are planning to leave the country. So we are facing a massive brain drain. At the same time, we are having extreme financial losses and the sharp decline in the quality of life and employment because of this crisis, and notably the currency crisis. And that poses an existential threat to the CCI and in the country, because we have this huge decline in demand and also supply for the cultural and creative goods and services. This is the final dark slide I have about the main challenges we observe for the CCI in Lebanon. So I have divided them into types of challenges. The first type is challenges related to the current economic context. So we have this political and economic instability. We also had the COVID-19 and the Beirut blast that affected CCI sectors like strongest. The governmental support, unfortunately, is absent for these workers. The cost of credit is pretty high. We observe the massive brain drain and high uncertainty. Also, the cost of imported raw material increase, and that's due to the current valuation. And they also observe a weak digital infrastructure in terms of electricity and internet costs that are becoming a bit frequent. And the main challenges specific to CCI are the small market size and lack of exposure to the international markets. We have high informality in CCI, but this is like we observe in other countries as well in the region. And artists do not have access to social safety nets. We have skills which are lacking, such as technical and management skills, especially in the field of digital knowledge. And IPR regulation, which is outdated in Lebanon. So let's now, after seeing all of these dark sides, let's look at the opportunities, CCI opportunities in Lebanon. So the country represents a very good and infrastructure for entrepreneurial ecosystem. There is this support and the culture of startups and companies. There is this 331 central bank circular and this support provided by government to the entrepreneurship. So there is private support provided by private institutions to enhance entrepreneurship in Lebanon. Lebanon CCI has a strong international reputation. So this is a huge capital that we can build on. The existing talents are often trilingual, agile, and skilled, and of course in this fashion and digital. So these are some very interesting and high potential sectors we can invest. And even though some technical skills may be lacking, in them can be relatively easy given the digital transformation and the quality of the education in Lebanon in general. And also Lebanon has a very rich cultural history. The Lebanese cuisine is spectacular. It's very well known everywhere. It is a source, it can be a source for culinary and gastronomic innovation and also exports. The country has a number of rich cultural and natural sites, heritage sites, natural sites, and very interesting touristic destination. The current crisis also, if you look at them, can be turned into opportunities. First of all, in terms of currency devaluation, actually made Lebanese skilled labor cheaper. So even the fact that we are moving towards a digital transition, we can have Lebanese skilled labor working for abroad. There is this increase in demand for local products because of the devaluation. So local products are cheaper, and that enhances the demand and also increases the size of Lebanese market because imported products are less affordable and people turn into local products. And also there is this inflow of foreign aids, and everyone is aware of the situation and wanted to help. So these are the main opportunities that we can capitalize for CCI in Lebanon. And I also wanted to talk about CCI in particular as a pillar for resilience. So we can see that it is highlighted everywhere that the pandemic has uncovered the immense contribution of culture and creativity to citizens' well-being, social innovation, and economic growth, and international cooperation. So we see that cultural activities are important, are key, not only as their economic relevance, but also as their contribution to the well-being of society as a whole. And I put this picture of this statue done by a Lebanese artist, Hayat Nazar. I think it is a very powerful symbol of how we can rise from the rubbles, because this is sculpture was made from the explosion, the Beirut blast rubbles, and symbolizes the city's hopes of rising from the rubble. And we see that this statue is standing tall, and it conveys for me a very strong message. And also it shows how art is important, why culture is so important, and why it is a source of hope. So this is my last slide. I'm going to give you a few policy recommendations that are relevant in the context of Lebanon. The first of all is to mainstream CCI in public policy. So we need to first of all define we need a national definition of CCI in the country, which is adopted at the national level. And then that definition will allow us to have different plans to develop markets for Lebanese creative products, and also to create a clear healthcare and social protection schemes for workers in these sectors, and also to target those sectors by having fiscal incentives like tax breaks for those sectors that are highly affected by the crisis. So it's important to have this definition and to mainstream CCI in order to target highly affected sectors, because, as I said, it's not just about economic added value, it's also about social well-being, and it's very crucial to target those sectors. The second recommendation is to enhance entrepreneurial skills among the creative workers. As I said, Lebanon has this huge potential in terms of quality of its labor force, but some educational programs could be developed to target lacking skills in terms of managerial and also the digital skills, which are pretty needed because the digital transition and digital economy is a pillar for resilience, is a pillar for to overcome the crisis and build the new economy in a stronger way. And the third recommendation is to reinforce coordination and collaboration among CCI actors. So in the mapping exercise, we have identified different actors in the CCI ecosystem, and what we observe is that there is no coordination among different actions, among different actors. And so the private sector should better coordinate and the existing ecosystem to support better and in a more effective way the CCI actors and workers. And last but not least is to reinforce IPR. So we need to establish IP help desks, so in intellectual property rights. As also I was mentioning about the digital economy and how it is, the digital transformation is changing our ways of consuming, and using IPR is a key issue that needs to be enforced, because the digital content is very prone to digital piracy. It's super easy to duplicate, copy, and diffuse at a very large scale digitalized material. So it is important to reinforce the intellectual property. And also for Lebanon, we have that they have not adopted international agreements, Madrid Agreement or Hague Agreement. It's important to move forward with that. in my short intervention, I also want to just tell you about this report that we have already published on the mapping of the cultural and creative industries in Lebanon. So if you're interested in my intervention and you want to read more about it, you can download it from our website and have more details about the main actors and all of the recommendations and challenges is well detailed in there. So thank you so much for your attention, and I'm glad to hear your questions and feedbacks on this.
Thank you very much
to the time. Yeah, 15 minutes.
So much for presenting this interesting mapping of CCIs in Lebanon. I think it's one of the most recent projects conducted in the Lebanese context, focusing on CCIs, the related challenges and opportunities. Thank you for highlighting some opportunities related to gastronomy, exporting, and emphasizing the role of CCIs in resilience, which is what we need nowadays in our country. And for highlighting some very important targeted policy recommendations related to social protection schemes, fiscal incentives, education programs, the digital economy, among others. So thank you very much. I open the floor if anyone has some questions or thoughts and would like to share more with us, and Josep Maria and Yegane.
Probably I have one question to Josep Maria about, because it was very interesting, your intervention. And so I wanted to know more about the potential of digitalization and to close the gap, to make clusters expand in a bigger areas. I think digitalization may have this potential because you highlighted the importance of the clusters and the the short distance between different actors. And I think digitalization has this potential to make the diameter of the clusters a bit bigger, and also have like some global clusters developed.
Yeah, there is an interesting point. Thank you very much for the question. But at the same time, yeah, you are true. It's true that technology may allow to break down distance and then this kind of limitations. But at the same time, and we have seen that with during and after the pandemic, technology cannot replace face-to-face interactions. So what do we have in this kind of clusters like the one in 22 district about video games is that a lot of connections, and these connections that you may have them in an informal way. So you cannot put them into digital. You cannot create the same trust and the same level of knowledge flows when you have people working in very different areas. It's true that part of the knowledge which is codified can be transferred by this way, but tacit knowledge, though this knowledge that arises from interaction, you need this geographical or this physical connection, because otherwise you are not going to transfer knowledge. And there are a lot of recent reports about firms that have been in which productivity has go down because of these strategies of working at home, because workers of the same firm cannot connect in the same way that when they are in the same place. So I would say we could partially reduce this gap by using technology, by digitalization, but not totally. Let me, if I may ask you some, because your presentation was very interesting about these potential areas that you were targeting. My point is that this is about the potentialities and what about effective implementation. So is really a clear strategy or a hidden strategy about trying to develop this kind of activities in Lebanon, just in a very initial stage?
So as I mentioned, there are a lot of like aids and different European projects and fundings coming to Lebanon. Unfortunately, we don't see governmental support and like a good coordination at the national level, and also like targeting the CCI at the national level by the government. That's unfortunate, and not to capitalize on these huge potentials. And meanwhile, we see that there are other, for instance, what we are implementing, we have two different projects trying to enhance entrepreneurship in CCI. Giving grants to the entrepreneurs, and also giving grants to the incubators to enhance CCI in the target countries. But what I see as missing is a coordination between different actors, because what we have done, so I did the mapping. I tried to identify what are the different other key actors who are trying to support entrepreneurship in CCI. And we have identified other institutions like, for instance, GIZ in Lebanon that are very active, and other institutions who are doing nice work. And we try to have like synergies between our actions, which is not very obvious. And also in the project about Med, the idea is that we have 8 countries in the region, and the idea is to develop these CCI Med hubs. So having interaction between different countries by giving grants to the incubators in different countries and bring them together under the umbrella of the same project. So there are some private initiatives, or so our initiative is the EU-funded initiative. But unfortunately, I don't see a lot of coordination. But that's something it's a very ambitious goal, but that's something we have in mind, to bring together different actors, even from different countries of the region, in order to build this CCI Med Hub, because these countries have the potential. And they have the know-how, they have the cultural background, the cultural heritage, which is very interesting to invest on. And so there are lots of works, but there are always some obstacles. I don't know if I could respond.
Yeah, perfectly. Thank you.
Thank you, Yegane. We have one question for you. Where do you see the government support specifically being most needed? Where do you see the government support specifically being most needed, and what are the areas that you would prioritize? Now that you are mentioning the lack of coordination, and where do you see like the biggest gap in this?
I think the biggest gap, as I mentioned, I put in my slides, is to mainstream the CCI in public, because we don't see a definition. We don't see that CCI is regarded as a key sector. But CCI has the potential. Gaming industry has huge potential to grow their and also, like, we see that we have a lot of good enterprises in Lebanon. The Lebanese Spotify. I just forgot about the name. Al-Gharami. You see, there are a lot of success stories we can deliver. Yeah, and unfortunately, I think the first thing needs by the government to be to identify CCI as a high potential sector, have this definition of the underlying sectors, and have policies that target those workers, vulnerable people, informal workers, artists. They are suffering a lot because of COVID-19, because of other type of crisis, but they are suffering the board. As you see, some other countries, they have target initiatives and targeted support for those artists, for those, because we value their work of art, the creation, the creative workers, and their added value, not only as a GDP, contribution to GDP, but also to the society, to the well-being of society. And this is what we see after COVID-19. We have so many problems, psychological problems in the society, and arts can help us in order to overcome that. And this is something that we need, and it needs to be regarded as a priority sector, I think. And if it's regarded as a priority sector, then we can have policies targeting workers, providing social security for them, having tax benefits or tax cuts, some facilitation in terms of exporting material, and all sorts of different supports to enhance the sectors.
Okay, thank you very much, Egane. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for the participants, and special thanks to Josep Maria and Egane, and we look forward to your participation in upcoming webinars related to entrepreneurship and creative industries activities.
Thank you so much for your invitation.
Have a
It was a pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Bye.